The breath, finally, Brooke, was the thing. Somebody finally taught me, if the asana that you're doing changes your breath, like, or causes you to hold it, back off. You're not in the flow. You're not in the flow of what I call the river of time. You're in the danger zone.
Mm.
That was a very feminine principle that came to me.
We the omnipotent fermentations of time, taking ancient dreams and technological prime. Weave the stories of the old right through the soul, and so they told and told until they start to transform. They're born again into the next era with the modern flair, but the message still bears one in the many, many in the one. So come on in, cause you're most welcome to the temple of earth, the sun and the moon. Reclaim your power, it's the place we commune, a place for the mind, the body and soul, seated through the ages, become infrangible. Welcome to the wild temple. Welcome to the wild temple.
How did I find the path of Tantra Yoga? I think it found me, Brooke. I think we are really clear that that's part of the gift is we realize we're not alone, we're not undirected, we're constantly being invited. So Tantra Hatha Yoga, I came to yoga to touch my toes because I was managing my stress during my householder years, raising three children. My partner was an artist. I was a nurse who was going to save the world and save him from having to earn money so that he could be creative. Could anybody relate to that? That need to be, I'm everything and I'm a people pleaser and I can do it all.
Mm.
So I was doing it all. And in the absence of a mentor that warned me about where that would land me up, I was just trying to manage. I had practiced yoga from a book at home for many years because I was a runner. My hamstrings were so tight. I finally made it to a yoga studio, moved in from the country. Kids were old enough and doing other things so I could go to a yoga class. So I like to say I came to yoga to touch my toes. But honestly, the first few Shavasanas, I dropped into a space where I was like, oh, where am I? How did I get here? I feel like I just ran 20 miles and got my endorphins just right and got that zone.
Mm.
But really, it's just been 60 minutes of a skillful teacher teaching movement and breath. So right away, I was intrigued. And little did I know, this was the beginning of my romance with my nervous system, which is a thing I teach a lot about. So I learned Hatha Yoga from a very skillful teacher in Anusara Yoga, if there's anybody in the audience that remembers the Anusara Yoga days, with John Friend, who I give a lot of credit to. I still use his universal principles of alignment. And my body got trained and my breath got a little bit trained. But then I wanted to train my mind. And my teacher at the time didn't offer that. So lo and behold, Rod Stryker, the teacher where we met, moved to a town not far from me in Colorado. And a friend said, hey, he's teaching a weekend workshop. Let's go.
Mm.
I went. And in that short, it might have actually, Brooke, been even a day-long workshop, I was introduced to breathing techniques that aren't elaborate, but are super profound. And he was doing movement with mantra using the sonic science of yoga. And my inner body just said yes. And then later in the day, he named his teacher. He said, I want to thank my teacher, or he referenced his teacher. And he said the name of his teacher. And when he said it, my whole body just buzzed. And I'm like, okay, something's going on here. And so that opened the door to tantric hatha yoga in the tradition of the Himalayan masters. And the rest is history. And we share these teachers and these beautiful time-tested teachings that are carrying me along no matter what.
Oh, Sarah, that is such a beautiful just gateway into this lineage and the deeper practices that yoga promises and the boons that yoga gives. I will have to share a few things where I just totally resonate with that entryway. where I think it was Shavasana, this dropping in. And we learned this term through Rod called smarana, right? This remembrance of your soul when you access that deeper place of rest, but wholeness in Shavasana. And it's interesting. I had a conversation with someone yesterday. I was at a birthday party and he was turning 42, and he sat me down and just started to open up to his woe, which I thought was really interesting. But the woe was around the inability to relax the mind to feel at peace. And so he was working with ayahuasca and going to the gym and doing all these things. And I was like, have you ever tried yoga? And he was like, I know I should. It makes my body feel really good. And I was like, well, what if I were to share with you that when you can curate a practice, just how you're working with your body, and it shapes your breath, that then the breath shapes your mind to become more peaceful or more still. And he was like, okay. And if it does that and I'm brought into presence, presence feels very bad to me. The present moment feels very bad. And I went into a little more, just like personal conversation with him. But what I realized was most of our world only has a superficiality of an understanding of what is possible in a life and in the world. And it's based off of our senses, what we see, taste, touch, feel, etc. But when you receive a practice from a masterful teacher and they drop you into a shavasana that brings you into this liminal space of the world behind the world, right? Or this kind of depth of your holism, that's where the juice is. And I think that gateway is probably what brought both of us out of, we share very similar histories of midwifery, women's care, wellness, and like turning to yoga to have stronger mental health and a more vibrant body. But it's more than that. It's that liminality. Yeah, I'm curious your thoughts on this.
Oh, the world beyond the world. Let's just pause for a moment and for our listeners, and just if you're listening and you're not driving, just pause and look around you. This is polyvagal theory. Give your nervous system a moment. Just cast your eyes around the space where you are. Maybe you're folding laundry or washing dishes or walking. And let that sink in. The world beyond the world behind the world. Feel it in your body, that phrase. It's an invocation. And you've been there before. And Brooke, you mentioned using plant medicine, hallucinogenic plant medicine, which is so very popular right now. And I understand it. There's this craving for the world beyond the world because the world of matter is in such chaos.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the tagline right there. If you want to get out of the chaos and get into that inner world, this is the invitation of authentically taught and practiced yoga, pranayama, Ayurveda, what I call yoga beyond the poses. Because yes, we refine our container, but if you want to get into the world beyond the world, there are so many simple ways to do that. And in that liminal space, Brooke, would you agree? There are strands of light, there are strands of authenticity. What are the other strands you would put in? Truth, knowing,
Yeah, wholeness, beauty,
beauty.
and an inspiration.
And they're weaving. You're not the weaver.
Mm.
This is the main thing, right? Such a relief in those shavasanas. I like, oh. And I later learned the phrase, I am not the doer. But who can believe that in the modern world when you have to do so much? But
Yeah.
when we drop into that space, we realize I am not the doer. I am held. I am one of those strands.
Mm.
And just like when the sunlight, when we might be outdoors or maybe even in our homes and the sun comes through and we can see all the little things, dust motes, but they're all the things that are there that we don't normally see. And you're like, oh, there's the world beyond the world. I wonder what's going on. And there's such freedom. And it's not bypass.
Mm.
We're still in the world as householders.
Mm.
We're not bypassing, we're recognizing that we are a part of the weave.
Thank you so much for speaking into firstly the nervous system, as we, you just did, and kind of framed our world behind the world feeling tone, and then the not bypassing, but noticing that there is a deeper reality that can really support us in these very chaotic times. And so, because our listenership is mostly women, and I would say women that are seeking empowerment in a time where there's a lot of, oh goodness, like still suppression around female growth and female sovereignty with our bodies, your path as a midwife, as a nurse, as I would say a feminist, and I might be wrong. You may have a better term for this. I know I would call myself a feminist, just being proactively feminine and divine feminine. That's how I would define it. But I'm curious how you have learned to frame what is largely a very patriarchal tradition, the yogic culture, and even in our lineage, because it's passed down through the male members of a family, for example, or of a particular yogic path. How have you been able to reframe it for the female body? What are you noticing that is maybe kind of offline or not holding true for us that we've had to adapt the yoga of this lineage to meet our needs? Curious.
I love this question, Brooke, and you and I can, I think, co-answer it because I'm a registered nurse. It's been almost 50 years since I was licensed as a registered nurse. And when I went to nursing school almost 50 years ago and saw babies being born, I saw the medicalized version of birth. And God bless the medicalized version. I'm one of those women that would have died in childbirth with my first child. She was stuck in my pelvis. She came in crooked. And had it not been eventually for a cesarean section, we would have been one of those mommy baby graves. So I am not dismissing medicalized birth. I thought that's all there was because I went to nursing school and I saw birth happen that way. Right after nursing school, I moved to a small mountain town in Colorado, and I immediately made friends with a woman who had her first baby at home. And I thought, oh, I need to call somebody. You shouldn't have babies at home. It's so dangerous. What about this and what about that? But I was so entrained by the holistic way she embraced her life, her child, her perspective. She began being such a profound teacher. And she was doing some birth assisting. And she said, why don't you just come and see what it is? So I could go on and on about midwifery, and so could you. That's another conversation. The reason I bring it forward is medicalized birth comes from masculine principles of power over nature. And again, in my case, thank you. Nature wasn't going to allow my birth to happen. And I wanted nature to be worked with in a powerful way to save me and my baby. When I made the conversion to, oh, there's medicalized, and then there are these beautiful home birth midwife assisted births, it framed for me as a young woman the difference between the masculine and the feminine. Not making the masculine wrong, but making the healthy masculine very desirable and making the healthy feminine also so beautiful. And when they come together, we would say in the yoga tradition, Shiva and Shakti, yin and yang, there's a dimensionality that is present there. So back to your question about yoga. Yes, yoga, all my first teachers were all men. I didn't sort of question it. It just seemed like that's the way the world is. If you want to know something, ask a man because the women are at home, changing diapers and they know that stuff. But this other stuff is in the purview of men who have the freedom to do things other than tend the hearth. I suppose that it was knowing that there is a masculine and feminine at work in anything that initially awoke me to this piece. But I suffered an injury early in my yoga career by pushing myself too hard. I was between two women at a workshop back in the Hatha yoga days. Two powerful women who I have deep admiration for were very masculinized. And so they had been able to achieve, they were Ashtangis, and they'd been able to achieve these incredible ways of shaping their bodies. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do that. Well, I tore a hamstring off of a hamstring insertion. I'm touching it right now in my buttock. And still there.
Back to your hamstrings, Sarah. It's all about the
I'm the hamster, this tight, strong girl. And I could feel it come off. I could almost hear it. And it's an injury that I still carry to this day. And that was the moment I was like, oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. There's another way. The breath, finally, Brooke, was the thing somebody finally taught me. If the asana that you're doing changes your breath, like, or causes you to hold it, back off. You're not in the flow. You're not in the flow of what I call the river of time. You're in the danger zone.
Mm.
That was a very feminine principle that came to me. And then studying, as we both have, with powerful masculine teachers in the tantric hatha yoga world, it was all women who were there. And I bonded up with women like you, and we just naturally began feminizing it, if you will, and seeking the healthy masculine and the healthy feminine, where we get that zone, that hybridization that's like nothing else.
I don't think I ever thought about this, but it does feel true that the many years we studied under these teachers, they became more and more soft, more effeminate, and even using a greater language of more divine mother. And I think that's really beautiful, the adaptation of the times, and as practitioners, us recognizing the need for a shift and that permission. I call our tradition the tradition of permission, and I don't know, it feels fun, but it's really due to this kind of allowance that our tradition is given from Swami Rama, even, who I know some of his first students were people that tried to mug him on the streets. And so he was able, I don't know if you remember that story, but with Kung Fu, he was able to fight them off. And then they were like, we want to learn from you. He said, okay. And so, we have this just a really lovely tradition that accepts so many householders and not householders, and so many people of every color, shape, size, and background. And in that, I feel it's really given us a place, especially as women, and especially as women who have tried to fit ourselves in the box of the masculine paradigm to be able to survive in a capitalistic world, for example, but also as women who are on this edge of being change makers and really calling in a new reality. Like, we need the skills, the guidance, and the map to actually have the power tools to affect change. And this is the tradition that does this. And so I'm just as someone who would love to always just sit at your feet, because you naturally emit so much beautiful wisdom, especially when you're bringing yoga and nature together. As a very dedicated, seasoned practitioner, what kind of practices would you say are most beneficial for women during these times right now?
Lovely question. Let's just do a retreat and teach all that.
Okay.
Well,
Maybe her festival. Let's try her festival.
and this is precisely I'm going to call it prescriptive yoga. And I say this to the people who come to practice with me all the time. My students, I don't even know what to call, because I feel that we're in community. It's not like teacher and student necessarily, but when I'm guiding, it really matters. Yes, these times matter, and it also matters what life stage we're in, how we practice. And say in general, I made a list. Let me look at it, because I liked it when I made the list. Care for the nervous system is on my list.
Mm-hmm.
And
So high in priority there. Absolutely.
here's my list: care for the physical body, rhythmic living, which is foundational to Ayurveda, the river of time, the cycle of the day, the season, etc. Care for the nervous system, which is paramount in these times when we are assaulted by stimulation and negativity and threat.
Mm.
Care for the mind and community. This is a recipe, right? I mean, think about this. We could come into the kitchen, if you will, as chefs, and maybe you're coming for a cooking lesson. Care for the physical body, 2 cups of that, a cup and a half of rhythmic living, another couple cups care for the nervous system, the mind. I don't even know the proportions. And then there's all the spices that would enhance and bring out the flavor of being able to move between this liminal space that you described earlier, world beyond the world, the Shavasana place,
Mm.
right? How do we, and this is the weave of Tantra, is you're in the world, but you're not of the world, which is a Judeo-Christian teaching that I love. And for many years, I'm like, how do you do that? I was working 12-hour shifts in critical care, right? Or midwifing at the end of a dirt road in the middle of a blizzard.
Mm.
Things weren't going well. And you're like, okay, how do I be in this world and do what needs to be done, but not be so gripped by it that I lose my life force, that the prana, the life force is so pulled out of me that I collapse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this. And I do want to highlight, I love how you call it well, rhythmic living and this kind of flow of the river. I call it the dharmic revolution because it feels so revolutionary to just come back to nature. But this that I feel, and I think you feel too, where when we are living in sync with Mother Nature, we become, as we should, we are her, but more of a part of her. So we become her force, right? So as a force of nature, that right there is protection. And that right there gives us the ability to not be affected by the moment as much, right? So I've been witness to babies being born, I've been witness to babies dying or never having taken a breath. And in that moment, still having this anchor of the beauty of life. And it was mind blowing, like literally blew my little mini mind because I was like, who is this part of me that is able to hold such a space of wisdom that it's okay? That this, it's okay that this baby has not come through. I mean, it was so horribly painful in so many ways. And what I remember noticing, the very first thing was how beautiful it was. The entire room felt like had been sprinkled in angel dust, like not the drug, but like glowing, beautiful, like altars everywhere. This like sunset kind of lighting. It was so holy, and the same with with birth. When I remember my first birth, I was like, why hasn't the world stopped? And everybody sing and just turn their gaze to these parents who did so much work bringing this mama that brought this baby in. And yeah, it's yeah, I think when we start to recognize these seasons and flows and adaptations that we have that capability, like we gain the capacity in being stable amidst the change. And that's one of the things that authentic deep yoga teaches you is like you skill up. It's not just the yoga asana, but you're skilling up with some tools. And then when you do this, it's like other people learn from you just naturally in that hierarchical community connection. Um, but yes, you have a very beautiful perspective of specifically, and I'll have to say, so you're in your 70s yet, or are you just 70?
70 in September.
You will turn 70 in September?
I was 70 in September of 2024. Yeah.
Hey, okay, I turned 50 this September, so I know we're real close in September, maybe-ish. So the radiance that you exude is incredible, and if anyone hopefully could meet Sarah, you're like, what? You look 50. You know, it's you look, you act like I know I'll be reaching out to you and you're like, oh, I'm about to go on a, whitewater rafting tour with my ladies, and you're like 69. I'm like, yes, girl, get it. Playing with my grandchildren, riding the sled, like just this kind of I wouldn't say fearless living because there's an embrace of the caution, but you're also just very vital. And so I'd love for you to speak into this, the stages that we go through as women, as human, and then yeah, any particular advice you'd have with this, the nervous system, the rhythm, your kitchen recipes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, vibrant aging. And I just want to, for a moment, pause with this word aging. So anytime I work with professionals trying to figure out how to explain to the world what my work is, they're like, don't use the word aging. All the data points are that people click away from aging. And at first I was like, okay, I'll think of something else. But I've done the full circle. And aging it is. We're all aging. If you're listening and you're 24, you're a day older than you were yesterday, and you're a day closer to being 25.
Hmm.
If so, we're all aging, and the vessel of our body notices the passage of time.
Hmm.
And that's so we're all aging. So that I just want to use vibrant aging, meaning applying to any stage of life.
Maybe I love word sound power and etymology and like how it brings out feelings. Maybe if you just flipped it, aging vibrantly, right?
And
Because then people rest on the word vibrant.
then you could say to somebody, how are you aging vibrantly today?
Yep. Instead of like vibrantly aging, then they're like, oh, I'm aging.
See, this is so tantric, what you just did, right? This idea that the world is here and we are forming with it, and we are forming it and it is forming us.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, and we have more of a say than we realize. We are actually empowered when we want to be, and we can create this reality that has largely been created by minds.
absolutely. And the use of language, this is another thing we could riff on. The way we use our words creates form.
Mm.
One of my mentors, Dr. Claudia Welsh, likes to say, what you think matters because it becomes matter.
Mm.
And what we say matters because it becomes matter.
Mm.
And in a fast moving world where there's so much imagery and so many words streaming by us, it's one of the reasons we're in this chaos right now, because we're not mindful. We're not remembering that what's coming out is forming, matter is forming around it.
Mm. Absolutely. And then that brings us back to your recipe of what's necessary right now. So I'm a big advocate for mental health and for people going to therapy to get their nervous, even if it's just to understand the language of the nervous system. You may not have a capital T trauma, but we're all in it. We're all in this like version of traumatic experience, even with this growing climate crises. If you have a language for the nervous system, that alone is a power tool. And then when you start to apply understanding the right um, diet, the right exercises, the right whatever it is you're bringing in through different stages of your life, naturally what'll happen is your mind is like, hey, hallelujah, you're doing what I need, you're supporting me, so I'm going to be more positive for you. And same party I was at yesterday, it was a birthday party, and I was just looking at like and trying not to be judgmental. I don't feel I was. It was very just heightenedly noticing that a third of the people were really on something, whether it was pills or um, herb, I don't know, but it was like you're talking to them and their like eyes are drooping down and there's just not a vital clarity right there. And then the spectrum of people to then being, really beautiful, brilliant people that I know are, very present in our community here and, have made great change. And yet, even though they were clear and they weren't on some kind of self-medicating substance, there was a lot of sadness and grief and doubt and despair. And there aren't a lot of tools that people are feeling they can turn towards. So one in that group is comedy, a lot of comedians, a lot of clowns. So of course the clown is naturally morose, but then also gym, exercise, so again, it's like we have this toolkit that if we could just bring it out of its appropriated, bastardized version of hot chocolate yoga, right? Then we could actually start to make available more tools for people to help our world become a better place. So I know I keep kind of bringing it back into this, but I also don't want to lose the question of the different stages of life. So whatever you'd want to speak into this, Sarah, I'd love to hear.
Work that I so deeply appreciate is I think you and I and many of our colleagues, the faculty, for example, at our upcoming Her Festival Women's Gathering, we are literally driven to find ways to bring these ways of being to the world that are so accessible and they're so anecdotal, and they're such an antidote to the pervasive uncertainty and fear that's present right now. That's for many of us doubled down with this idea that, oh, I'm getting older and less capable, and the world is falling apart around me. So, tools for that. I want to talk about life stages, but first, Brooke, might we just talk about prana for a moment?
Yes, please. That brings me back to liminality. Yeah.
Back to this idea of the world beyond the world. So prana, yes, it's a clothing line. That's how I first knew the word. Like, oh, that's nice clothes, but I can't afford them. Then I became a yoga teacher. I'm like, I have a discount, only to find out, unfortunately for me, the women's prana clothing wasn't a good fit. All right, now we're done with that. It's more than a clothing line. We're talking about vitality and vibrancy, and you're saying you're 70. How do you end up being and looking like you do? First of all, I have good genetics. That's lucky genetics. And if you haven't had your genome done yet, please do. We'll talk about that another time. Something I talk about with my private clients, the importance of understanding the blueprint of your ancestry. Secondly, I've been a nature kid. I was a nature kid. I grew up in a typically turbulent household. And I had a place when it got too fractious between my siblings or my parents. Nothing terrible, just like, I got to get out of here. I would go to the forest. And I had a favorite place. There was a tree next to what was then a big cliff, and it had a cleft in it that I could fit my girl body into and just feel like, okay, I'm okay now. I was fortunate to have access to nature. So I always sensed the eternal forces that were here before me, would be here after me, were shaping me. And if I played my cards right, I could go play with those eternal forces.
Mm.
So, relationship to nature. Nature is full of prana. I just keep pushing us into prana. Okay, but first I'm going to say nature. Then I became a health care professional after going to school, becoming an outdoor educator and guide, and seeing the transformational opportunities that nature provide. I worked for Knowles and Outward Bound, if any of you know those organizations. And so I knew about the journey of becoming a great human, and I didn't want to. I knew that I couldn't be an outdoor educator forever because my vessel, my knees would go bad. Long story short, I went to nursing school, and that began my journey of seeing people in all stages of life, in all many, many, many versions of health and ill health. I've worked in every specialty there is, although there are now some new ones that I haven't worked in because they're too new. Fascinated by this human journey and always asking myself, why are some people healthier than others?
Mm.
So I began looking for common denominators as I went about my clinical career as a nurse. And it didn't take long before I was in health food stores, seeing vibrant people, seeing the kind of people that had a life force, had that vitality. And I'm wondering, well, there's a real common denominator here. Then I
Mm.
would go visit with them, and they were living in particular ways and eating particular things, none of which I was taught in nursing school. And I was like, oh, okay. So I began to bring those things together. So part of the reason I am as healthy as I am at my age is because I learned what not to do to destroy my vessel and my mind and my spirit.
Mm.
This is why coming into yoga was such a wonderful reunion for me, because all those little brooks and creeks come together in this tradition that we study.
Mm.
And they're all verified by my experience as a Western medical professional. There's almost nothing that doesn't happen in my spiritual life that doesn't have science behind it that I'm aware of as a Western medical professional. So a lot of what I do is to blend the science and the spirituality to find that sweet spot.
Mm.
The other thing I think that brings me great vitality is I can manage my mind. I've learned to do that. You spoke about it through the breath, through the formal practices of meditation that are available to us in this tradition. But I want to emphasize that for anybody listening, when you go for a walk and take out your earbuds and just listen to the birds and maybe breathe and move your body with your breath, that's a spiritual life.
Mm.
You don't have to come to India with us and do all these really deep practices. Some of us will do that, and then we come back and share the vibe. But a spiritual life is right there in your living room with certain conditions that allow you to feel that world beyond the world.
Mm. Mm.
As we age, that becomes more accessible, and actually there's almost as if it wants you more. And Brooke, I turned 70, you turned 50. Maybe you feel that invitation to the inner life calling a little more insistently than you
Mm.
did 10 years ago. Would that be the Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'd say, like you, my inner life is more peaceful because I've learned how not to do and what to bring in more. I've learned very early on how to get a grip on my mind, where that was my strongest. Next to wanting to find my partner, like my soulmate, like that was the deepest, deep, deep longing in my heart. It was, how can I make my mind become my friend? Because it was not my friend. And the gift of being able to understand how breath is the key and prana is the key to really calming, taming, even controlling the mind, if we want to say it in that language. I feel because now I learned it, I integrate it, I practice it devotedly, that now turning 50, it's like, oh, what a sigh of relief. It's like I've gotten here. How lucky. And then yet the body, and I know you've talked a little bit before that I'm curious about muscle mass and that diminishing. I'm like, what's happening? But still this amping up of making the right choices and more quickly, I'm minding the gap, more quickly noticing when I've made the wrong choice and adapting quickly. Instead of it taking 10 years to adapt or a couple months, it's like, oof, that didn't feel good that I did yesterday. I pushed myself and went on a run, and I'd only had some tea and not enough protein for breakfast. And now I feel like I'm going to pass out. Like, okay, that's a no. Don't do that again.
Yeah. 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 It's beautifully said, this idea that when we goof things up, it can be the beginning of wisdom.
Hey.
And this is another reason that I experience deep vitality, is I have gotten pretty good at self-care. It's kind of a worn out term, taking care of myself in ways that are customized through Ayurveda, and also self-compassion, like
Mm.
catching myself when the inner critic she's either sneaking around, and the next thing you know, she's in the room, or she's just coming in hot and just saying, wait a second. No, 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 no. I know I can't make you go away completely, but
Mm.
you are not coming in here and having your way with me with and this is again a whole nother conversation, but learning self-care, authentic self-care and self-compassion, particularly as we advance through the life stages,
Mm.
is really important. Now, with that said, I have an almost 10-year-old granddaughter, and I watch her be self-critical. So we know it's hardwired.
Yeah.
But we also know that in the yoga that we teach, which is very aligned with modern neuroscience, by the way, we can rewire. You just have to know how. It's called practice, right? Practice makes better.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. So I want to talk about menopause for a minute, just because you're talking about being 50, and
Yeah.
I stopped bleeding. And I just want to, again, another enormous topic, but I want to, for our listeners, if you're perimenopausal, recently menopausal, if that's part of where you are on the river of time, I hope you're feeling the upswelling of support in the conversation and in the science and in the ways that menopause is being addressed as a initiation, a welcome to the next stage, rather than a punishment for getting old.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I always saw it as freedom. I went through early menopause and I was just like, yes, now I don't have to worry about, birth control, which none of them resonated with my body. So yeah, just I think beyond a couple of things. There's a lot of acceptance that I think if we can just go right to acceptance as this is what's happening, it's very natural. We don't have to hide it. There's no shame around it. What does it look like on me? Then we can start to turn towards what emotions are riding along the waves of that acceptance. And it could be that the grieving of your last chapter needs to be addressed. And that was a big one for me where I was no longer in the maiden or motherhood phase. I even had to grieve when I became a mother. I was like, I'm no longer in a maiden phase, So, but grieving into this next phase can be a part of like where you're really just holding your heart in the tenderness of the time. And then it doesn't have to be like a forever grieve. It can just be an acknowledgement of there is a loss that's happening. And with every loss, there's an ending that births a new something beautiful. And then also with the change and the acceptance, what do I need? Right? So maybe you need more sleep, bump it up 10 hours a day. Maybe you need more yoga nidra at 3 p.m. Or you do need more protein and you need to bump that up like bone broths or just nettles. Maybe you want to make nettles vinegars and, get your bones real strong, or just say no or yes, more please to sex if whichever one is helping you out, right? Yeah, curious your take on this.
First thing I want to bring in is all of what we've been discussing really since the beginning, but specifically now with menopause. Menopause is a life transition. All of these practices we're talking about are protective.
Mm.
And I love this idea of being protected, don't
Mm.
you?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I love it when we can protect each other. I love feeling protected by anything that protects me. An umbrella.
The tree that you climbed into as a young girl.
Tree
Oh.
I went into as a young girl, the poetry that I have a dear friend who lost her son to suicide, and she's a poet and she's been writing using her creative self as part of her grieving. And I turned to her. We recently had a tragic suicide in our family. My young nephew, age 22, seemingly out of the blue, right before Christmas. And I can turn to her poetry because she's speaking about loss and grief. And the beauty of her words and the vulnerability that she invites and shares allows me to feel protected because I'm not alone when I think, why? What was he thinking? What if I'd called him? All the things that come up. And so this idea of protective practices is enough, I think, enough of a selling point to bring people into a spiritual life. And again, described as a walk in nature, described as contemplative time at whatever level of tincture you take your spirituality. please take it. It's protective. You're going to need it when the big stuff comes. It will give you resilience.
Mm, mm. Beautiful. It brings me back to the word dharma again, where one of the roots, dr, means support, right? So it's the practices, the poetry, the friendships, the community that support you. And when we are able to receive the support from nature, even, or just rhythmic living, seasonal living, honoring your menopausal stage, all of this, then, yeah, that support leads to protection. And we know as tantrics that the more you receive this kind of support and the more your capacity for being a very vital, vibrant, clear-minded being becomes, the less you need protection from. It's like you go into that terminology called Ishvara Pranidhan, which is this surrender, being able to just go in the flow of life. And when we do that, it's okay if tomorrow is our last day here. It's okay if we lose this thing because it was really lovely to have that thing in our life. And, so it just, I think that's when we're coming back to that being of the world, being a part of the world, but not of the world, or, however it is, being the lotus, part of the world, but above the world.
This world of matter. We're
Yeah.
lucky to transit it. I mean, who doesn't love that cup of tea and the forest and the friendships and all the things? But there's more.
Mm,
And I think, again, I want to bring this idea of prana back in, this idea of when we become hostesses for the
mm,
life force and we welcome the life force. I often say to the people that come to study with me that think of the life force, think of prana like a drone. It's looking for a place to land, and it's not going to land where there's clutter and tumult and uncertainty. It's looking for a safe space to land and release its cargo of vitality, of insight, of resilience. So when we invite prana, and there are many ways of doing this, from very ordinary ways to really complex, skillful, crazy, wonky ways,
mm,
prana we could be simple and say, the more money I have in the bank, the more prepared I am for some great event in my life. Or when my nephew died, I needed to fly multiple times and there were costs and all the things. So prana is prana is the thing. And so learning about the life force and how to bring it in is so much what we do, quite simply. And the final thing I'll say is the great spiritual teaching that I received early and I'm still unpacking, which is you are the company you keep.
mm.
Keep great company. So let's take a moment again. And if you're in a place where you can just look around and expand your sense of things, just the sky, I can see the sky, finding the breath and what it's up to. We are the company we keep. So keep great company. It's humans, it's your food,
Mm,
it's the media that you choose, it's the rhythm of your day. What company are we keeping
mm,
that's integrating into us or we have to use energy to keep it out of us?
mm,
So, very simply, find the kind of person you want to be and hang out with them. That's what I did in yoga when I came into this community, Brooke, where we met. I was like, oh, and there were specific people. I'm like, oh, I want to look more like her, or I want to be as wise as him, or isn't that how humans learn? We are apprentices. So spend some time reflecting on what you're apprenticing to and the things that I hate to think that I'm apprentice to Netflix, although I don't want to think of myself as an apprentice to Netflix. A consumer, yes, with discernment, but not an apprentice.
Well said. Yeah. Yeah. And aren't honestly we lucky to have a community that we could turn to to learn from the company that we keep and the tools and the maps and the practices that we gain from that. So that is what I think an authentic, heart-forward yoga tradition offers. And I don't feel that everything that calls itself yoga out there really has that as the treasures within. So, just to be discerning, I think you're right, is true, is key. So, Sarah, I'm just noticing our time here, and I wanted to invite you just to share anything that you have coming up. I know specifically you and I are on our fourth, fifth year. We've run this Her Festival gathering where it started in Maine and now we're bringing it to Mexico. Well, it's been running for about 4 years. I think you've been with us for about 3 years now. And so I'm really excited with our theme this year, and especially your take on the elder and women stepping into the path and practice of being an elder and really honoring that. I'm so grateful that you and our other elder, Jean Mazet, are going to be there holding space for that. I'm on the threshold of it, a bridge to it. And so, yes, we'll love to be sitting at your feet and also sharing the wisdom that I've gained. But anything that you'd like to share around that, eldership, elderhood, and any upcoming offerings you have outside of Her Festival?
Well, I want to issue a special invitation to elders, and you may be 50 and feel that you're an elder.
Mm-hmm.
Elder, a wise woman. Maybe you're already a wise woman and you're aspiring to deepen your wisdom. Please come and join us in this pristine, beautiful place that's very accessible, very safe on the Pacific coast in Baja. The food alone is worth coming for, and the company is going to be extraordinary. Everything from the guides, Brooke and I being two of them, to the sea turtles. It's a lot of good company there. Special invitation to older women. We'll be doing some adaptive. Some older women are saying, I can't come because I can't do that yoga that they do, the younger women. Well, guess what? There'll be breakouts. If you have limitations, if your body is in a particular place in your life, we can still do yoga, because yoga means union and yoga means skill in action. So please run away from any teacher that can't adapt for you and is not skillful. They're not really a yoga teacher, they're a movement teacher. So please come and join us. Wise women are needed. You might notice in culture. I just want to say for a moment, if you think about AOC, she's a wise woman and she's probably in her 30s. So wisdom is not, we're not saying, oh, you have to be 50 or 60 or 70 or blah, blah, blah. We're seeing the wise woman archetype show up so much younger, because it's needed. That channeling of the healthy feminine to meet the healthy masculine. Because in that merge, we have the solutions to these complex problems. So please come to our women's gathering. I'm sure the information will be in the show notes. And as far as what I've got going on, right now I'm pivoting my work largely into Brooke, vibrantly aging.
Yes. Or aging vibrantly, aging vibrantly.
No, wait, lead with vibrantly?
Lead with aging.
Aging.
And with vibrantly.
Vibrantly.
Aging.
And again, at any age, if you feel like you're losing it, you're losing your vitality, come talk to me. You can find me at yogabeyondtheposes.com. I'm happy to speak with you on a discovery call. I have 2 programs running right now. One is the Wellness Circle, in which we explore all things that create deep wellness, and the Crone Chronicles.
Ooh.
Yeah, a chance for wise women to gather around a selected topic. And it's a circle. I facilitate, but it's not a fixing or advising opportunity. Come together around a topic, and it might be menopause, it might be death, and everything in between. We've done the patriarchy as well. And it's storytelling, so we can learn from each other's experiences. Very right. Together we're stronger. And when we are collaborative in circle, teachings arise very naturally when we listen to our friends, our colleagues, and our peers.
Mm, mm.
Yeah. So I'm also going to be moving into grief and loss. And I'll just tantalize you a little bit. In Western medicine, there are 3 pillars of aging vibrantly at any age. And this research has been conducted all over the world. And they're so simple. I love these 3 pillars. The first one is about the physical body. It's about maintaining muscle mass. You all know, use it or lose it. And muscles matter for so many reasons. And this is something that I teach. And I'll just give you a spoiler alert. I use YouTube to maintain my muscle mass. We can talk more about that. The second pillar of aging vibrantly, a sense of purpose.
Mm.
And sometimes that flies out the window when the transitions come. We divorce, we retire, experience profound loss, and we lose ourselves. Like, what's the point? What's getting me out of bed in the morning? We'll be talking about that.
Mm.
And the third one is resilience to loss. And I'll be really unpacking that because in this last year, we've had some big losses in my family, and I've been a student of those losses. And I bring what Brooke and I have been discussing for the last hour into this. So in me, you'll find science and spirituality woven together. And you'll feel my background as a Western medical professional, meeting my dharmic self as a guide and a healer, etc. And that's the recipe that I use. So yogabeyondtheposes.com. And come to her festival, please. We'd love to know you. We need you.
Oh, my heart is so full listening to you. I hope you have just like just a flow of women coming to receive that course from you. That is absolutely needed, beautiful. And for all of you listening, you know, I'm pretty honest. I'm very transparent. I value integrity first and foremost above most anything in life. And Sarah is a masterful teacher, masterful, and everything that she shares I know she's lived through because I've known Sarah for a long time. So everything that she's sharing as what she shared as story to you just now, but then also as a packaged, way to connect with her is real deal. So please find her. Yeah, Yoga Beyond the Poses. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being here and sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you.
Your skill and your care and the work that you're doing in the world as well. I think it both springs from our heart of our deep love for being embodied beings on this beautiful planet. Let's keep it that way.
Mm-hmm.